Now, the facilitator of the National Multi-Party Convention, Professor William Gumede, says the two-day discussions taking place in Kempton Park are an opportunity to reimagine South Africa and tell a story of hope. Gumede is heading a team which is facilitating engagements amongst parties who are seeking to put in place a pre-election agreement as an alternative government for South Africa after next year's elections. He says he is emphatic that the discussion and any pact that may emerge is not against a particular party, but rather to establish a minimum core vision for the country. The discussions will also focus on how to get other opposition parties to participate in such a pact and may touch on establishing a common position on how coalitions should be structured in South Africa.
What would be the common ground for solutions for South Africa going forward? And then I'm hoping at the end that we would have a public agreement that would be transparently shown to the public, and then the parties will pledge to that agreement, and that pledge will hold them accountable. Because it's pointless of sitting for 2 days and prior to this convention and agreeing, and there's no accountability. So the public pledge really will be the accounting mechanism.
SABC News reporter Natasha Phiri is at that convention and joins us live at the moment. Natasha, how are the talks going?
Well, very good afternoon to you, Francis, and to our SABC viewers once again. Members of the media just patiently camping and waiting to hear what talks are actually going on inside. And that, of course, that process then is then led by Professor William Gumede, who's an independent chairperson who will be facilitating the talks or discussions amongst those 7 political parties that have gathered here in Ekurhuleni for the multi-party convention. Some people and some political parties saying that it's quite a nostalgic moment because over 30 years ago, Francis, this is where the CODESA negotiations had actually taken place, and 3 decades later, these talks, multi-party talks, are actually taking place. But just to give some analysis to this, I'm joined by our political editor, Mzwandile Mbeche. Mzwa, you heard what the various political parties had to say. You heard what Professor Gumede had to say. What is your take? I mean, especially because yesterday we spoke to various political analysts, and they had said that it would be a difficult time, you know, and they don't see anything coming out of such talks. What do you think?
Well, a very good afternoon to you and the viewers. It will be very difficult for them, but the fact that they've decided to be here, maybe let's give them the benefit of the doubt. I was just looking at the parties sitting there. Some of the parties there have been working together, particularly in the Johannesburg Metro Council, but they couldn't agree. So somehow that's the reason why you have the current government in the city of Johannesburg. So it's because of the very same parties. But I guess they may have learned from their mistakes. Have they? That's the big question. But for me, Natasha, it's going to be very interesting and important to see if they are able to go over some of the nitty-gritties, the minute details of how to work together. Because easier said than done. Yes, we can say you want to work together, want to remove the ANC, but the fact of the matter is that, so are you agreed on what should happen? The quick example, what if, let's say, combined they get 55%? Who will they field as the president? So will every other person, will they field the people according to the majority and stuff like that? For example, the issue of allocating the posts. But when all is said and done, by the way, this is only if the governing party falls below 50%. It's possible they may do all they do and the governing party just is still over 50%. Null and void.
And I think the big question is that how will it happen? I mean, earlier on we spoke to John Steenhuisen, had actually proposed this moonshot, pact, and we were joking lightly saying that will he be the one that was taking this pact to the moon? How will it be done, and how easy is it to choose who's actually going to champion this?
In fact, already, I think it's the lead of the UIM, they are already clear that they just don't want anything to do with this moonshot thing because they feel it's unrealistic, you can't relate to it in South Africa. So clearly, they will have to be able to navigate around those issues. But this is a convention which essentially is at the instance of the DA because they came out and boldly declared this is what they want to do. But also there's an interesting aspect into this that perhaps many people may not be looking at. So these are opposition parties minus, I would say, one. Why do I say minus one? Because they've been very deliberate. The DA has said the third biggest party, which is the EFF, is political enemy number one. So which means immediately it's out of the equation. So as the opposition parties, you are already starting from a somewhat weakened position because already someone who is on the opposition benches, who has sizable support, is not part of you. So it's going to be very, very difficult. In fact, I don't know whether after engagements with other parties, they will be persuaded to bring in more people. I mean, Mashaba said in his speech, he said, we want more other parties. So will they propose that in that meeting that they are having? Will they say, because we want more and we want to have a stronger voice, let's get the EFF? Will the DA accept that? That is the question. As far as the DA is concerned, they've just come out clear to say, whatever it takes, we are not speaking to the EFF. What if a party like IFP, for example, and Action SA says, no, we want... So those are the fundamental issues we're speaking about. If they are able to resolve those, possibly a glimpse of light. But if they can't, oh well.
And you know, in the earlier crossing, I'm so glad that you raised that point. Professor William Gumede had said that, listen, they're actually reaching out to other opposition parties. And yesterday, speaking to an analyst, Dr. John Molepe, he says that, you know, the problem with this pact is that we don't, or the country doesn't have strong opposition, to actually contest a party like the ruling party.
That's where these contradictions are happening. These other parties, you can see, may not necessarily have a problem with working with a party like EFF, for example. But the main convener of this has a problem. So how do you overcome that? How to bring more parties, and then when other parties suggest other parties? So for me, tomorrow, when they communicate the outcomes, so it will be very interesting. It will not be what they say, but also we'll be looking at the optics, at the unspoken, because sometimes it's the unspoken that speaks the loudest. So that they will not say maybe exactly what would have happened behind those closed doors.
Zandile Mbeche, thank you so much. Always, lovely talking to him, Francis, and just getting some insights as to what is actually going to happen here. We do understand that Professor William Gumede will be talking to us members of the media at 1:15, just to give us an update as to what is happening here at this two-day convention. But of course, I'll hand it back to you in studio for now.
Thank you, Natasha Phiri. Following those conversations, mostly behind closed doors for now, but we'll bring you that update later.